Well, I pictured that going differently in my head. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled by the wonderful people at Nerd Tease. Yes, I found some Nerd Tease. I dug through my home and found some Nerd Tease that I thought I didn't have any left, but Yes, it turned out I have some left, and I just put in my new order that should be here in a couple of days. And welcome to week 2 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2023 CFL season. And it seems like a lifetime ago at this point. Really, it was only 12 short months ago when we went on the heater of all heaters to start the CFL season. I was like 20-4 through the first 2 weeks last year. Do you remember that? I would have put my first 2 weeks last year up against anybody, professional gamblers, anybody. And fast forward to 2023, and it's a little bit different. Really stumbling out of the gates here in week 1, 3-9 overall. We've had worse weeks, but it's tough to remember a worse week to start a season. So look, obviously things did not go well in week 1. It was 2-2 straight up. We'll take that, we'll take it, but only went 1-3 against the spread and missed all 4 totals. So just off to a rollicking good start on the totals. Yes, a lot of week 1 is a coin flip, but you always want to go better. It's certainly a lot better than that to start off a season. But look, you can't do what I do and be scared of being wrong. You just can't. No gamble, no future. Like, you can't be scared to make wrong picks. Now, when I make wrong picks, I'm going to hear about them. That's the nature of the beast, and I know I'll be hearing about some of them in the comment section below, I'm sure. But all you can do is knuckle up and get better. I dove into the lab over the last couple of days. I think we're going to be better in week 2. CFL Fantasy didn't have a rollicking good start to the year either. Only put up 71.8 points in week 1. That has me just inside the top 6,200 overall in fantasy, and number 431 in Derek Taylor's CFL Fantasy League, which is the fantasy league I'll be playing this year. Next year, by the way, I will be running my own. So I'm not going to do it this year because I was behind the 8 ball on it. Next year, I will be running my own CFL Fantasy League. So for the CFL Fantasy heads, you will be able to play in my league next year. Only 431st in DT's league, but let's try to get better than that, obviously, as we move forward. My most outstanding player from week 1 obviously is going to be Dominique Rhymes. He put up 100 yards receiving with 8 catches and both of Vernon Adams' touchdown passes. A good 30-point performance to start the season for the guy that I think ultimately will lead the CFL in receiving this year. My team captain was Nick Arbuckle. That's about how my week went. Now, in terms of my CFL roster, I'm going to do things a little bit different this year with CFL Fantasy. My roster is going to come at the end of the episode because what I kind of realized was I'm kind of giving away what I think about the games. If you look at my roster and you see I'm stacked with one particular team, well, obviously he thinks that team is going to do well. So my CFL Fantasy roster will be at the end of this video. Our slate of games in week 2 in the CFL looks like this. The Calgary Stampeders are going to travel to Ottawa to take on the REDBLACKS, a battle of 2 teams who will not have their starting running backs. We'll talk about that. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers on Friday Night Football will travel to Mosaic Stadium, rivalry game against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's going to be Zach Collaros versus doesn't look like we know yet. On Saturday, the Edmonton Elks will travel to BC to take on Vernon Adams and the BC Lions, and the week will close with the Battle of the QEW, the Hamilton Ticats traveling to Toronto to take on the Argos playing in their home and season openers after having the bye last week. Speaking of last week, like a league-wide trend basically from last week, kind of sticking with what we've seen in the last few seasons, which was not a lot of points in the early season. The league trended 3-1 to the under, and as far as I'm concerned, there was maybe only like 2 teams, maybe 2.5 with the second half of the Hamilton game. There's 2 teams that looked like they were actually ready to play last week. I didn't think last week was a particularly exciting slate of games, and I don't think it was accurate of the excitement that you normally see in the CFL. So week 1 didn't quite live up to it. Obviously, we were exceptionally happy and excited that we have football back, but didn't quite live up to the standard of the CFL. Let's see if we can change that. All kinds of standards not being lived up to in week 1. We're going to turn things around here. Let's dig into week 2. That first game, Calgary in Ottawa taking on the REDBLACKS. On the Calgary side, Jake Maier answered exactly this many questions from week 1. Sub 60% on his completion percentage, threw for fewer than 155 yards passing. He did throw a touchdown. He also threw a pick. He was playing a pretty darn good secondary in the BC Lions. I would argue maybe like top 2 secondary in the CFL. So I get it. It was a tough matchup, but man, do you ever need more than that in the CFL. Jake Maier didn't exactly make a ton of fans in week 1, I don't think. I have a feeling he probably turns it around a bit here in week 2. And look, realizing that Kadeem Carey did get hurt in the game last week, left in the third quarter, I understand he didn't play the full game. Now, in saying that, he touched the ball 7 times before he left the game. Didn't we leave this discussion in like 2019? If Kadeem is playing, which you don't get that luxury this week because he's not, but if Kadeem is playing, Kadeem has to touch the ball or the Stamps don't win. Like we've been having this conversation for years. Now look, if he wasn't 100% before he got hurt, then I guess I understand it a little bit more. But man, when you get Kadeem back in there, you got to feed him the football. There's some stat lines that we're going to talk about in other games that that's the kind of volume that you need to be giving the best running back in the CFL. And I still believe that's Kadeem Carey. It won't be Kadeem this week. He is out this week, which means Peyton Logan draws the start for the Stamps. Also want to give a quick shout out on the Stampeders side to wide receiver Trey Odoms-Dukes, registering his first stat line in the CFL. I believe it was his second career game, but he made his first CFL stat line a memorable one, bringing in 7 passes for 75 yards and a touchdown in what was ostensibly his CFL debut. But a heck of a performance there by Trey Odoms-Dukes. Wanted to shout him out. On Ottawa's sideline, they weren't uncompetitive in their game last week. They were right there. They had a chance to win that game multiple times against the Alouettes. They were just hamstrung with really ineffective quarterback play on my fantasy roster, so I apologize for that. I feel like somehow I'm culpable in that. Only 176 yards passing from Nick Arbuckle, and he threw up 3 interceptions. Once again, we talk about you need more at the CFL level from Jake Maier. You really need more at the CFL level than what we saw from Nick Arbuckle, and he's a veteran. He's been in this league for a long time. He's been a starting quarterback in this league. We know he's capable of more than that. We just certainly did not see it in week 1. There was one dominant area for the REDBLACKS that I did want to point out, and that was in their pass rush. They generated 5 quarterback sacks in that game against Cody Fajardo. Let's see if they can hold on to that, because if the REDBLACKS can make that part of their identity this season moving forward, I think they're going to be in better shape. I think the REDBLACKS win some games this year, and they put themselves in a better position to do so if they can establish that, hey, we got a really good pass rush. Kadeem being out for the Stamps does definitely loom large over this game, even though I do feel confident in Peyton Logan's abilities to play in this league and operate as an RB1 when he needs to. And I do fully expect, like I said, I think Nick Arbuckle will rebound. He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing out there. I do think he has a better performance this week. I just don't think that's going to be enough for the REDBLACKS to win this game, especially where they are also going to be missing their starting running back, Devontae Williams. He will not be playing in this game, which I believe means Jackson Bennett draws the start at running back because Ante Milanovic-Litre is also hurt. These two teams are like the walking wounded. These two teams have so many injuries between the two of them. I just think it's too much versus not enough here with the REDBLACKS. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the Calgary Stampeders to win this game in Ottawa. Let's take the Stamps on the money line. On the spread, Ottawa is a 5-point dog in this game. 5 points feels too thin here. Calgary's head and shoulders got the better roster. They really do. And with the injuries that are, I think, more significant on Ottawa's side than they are on Calgary's, I got to lay those 5 points with the Stamps. I think that margin's just too thin for me. If it was over a touchdown, which who knows, the line in this game could get that large before kickoff tomorrow, maybe I might take the points there with Ottawa, but I like Calgary to win. Let's lay the -5. Total in the game set at 43.5 points. I think I'll stick under on this one. It seems to be the way the league is going in the early part of the season, even though it's the smallest line of this week. Let's stay under 43.5 points. Let's go Calgary 24, Ottawa 14. Stamps win, Stamps cover, and give me the under. On to Winnipeg and Saskatchewan now, and look, week 1, just another day for these Winnipeg Blue Bombers, man. An elite offense putting up 478 total yards, meeting a smothering defense, only allowing 239 to the Hamilton Ticats last week, but they were sloppy in the second half of that game. They had a 25-point lead at halftime, won the game by 11, means they were outscored by 14 points in the second half. They were sloppy on special teams. They took their eyes off the ball, which I guess you can forgive them for, given that, oh yeah, it was a 4-possession game. I'm very excited now with this Blue Bomber. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about this Blue Bombers team. We're still in the middle of like a modern CFL dynasty, which is amazing. But we finally get to see what Brady Oliveira looks like as a true bell cow running back. He got 24 touches in week 1, 22 of them on the ground, caught a couple of passes. That's the kind of volume that I want to see from Kadeem Carey when he's back there. But anyway, we'll stop talking about Kadeem Carey now. But we get to see what Brady Oliveira looks like as a true bell cow, because he did have Johnny Augustine in the backfield with him last year, poached about 65 carries. So the carries were about 3-1 for Brady Oliveira last year, but still having that other running back in there poaching some touches. Now we get to see what Brady Oliveira really looks like as a bell cow running back. I'm very excited for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers to see that. Also, let's just appreciate Nick Dembski. Man, Nick Dembski is still an undervalued wide receiver in this league. 6 catches for $113 and a score from Zach Collaros last week in week 1. Nick just quietly goes about his business, man. He is a true professional, and I really think we underappreciate that guy. On the Riders sideline, it looks like it's going to be offense by committee here for Saskatchewan. Jamal Morrow and Frankie Hickson basically splitting carries 2-1 in the backfield in week 1. They had 5 different receivers who had at least 3 catches. No surprise, as Trevor Harris does like to spread the football around. But speaking of Trevor Harris, we don't know if it's going to be Trevor Harris this week. Obviously, Saskatchewan leaving him out there, just a boneheaded coaching decision. They leave him out there for the last couple of plays of the game. He gets obliterated, and we don't know whether he's going to play or not. Now, they're saying that he's fine, but I can't help but notice that in practice yesterday, it was Mason Fine who was taking all the first team reps. So we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be for Saskatchewan, and that is awfully tough to go with a team not knowing who's going to be under center. Shout out to the Riders' defense last week. They generated 2 interceptions and 5 quarterback sacks against the Edmonton Elks. I can't pretend that performance, though, overall, that their team's overall performance would have beaten many other teams. Like, it beat Edmonton because Edmonton is snake-bitten at home. And everybody understands that. That performance, I don't think, beats a ton of other teams, even with how they played last week. There's a lot of teams that, based on their performance last week, Saskatchewan would not have beaten. Now, they got the win. That's what matters. But let's keep a level head. Rivalry games are often unpredictable. We all know that. These kind of games can go either way, because if you can't get up emotionally for these ones, this sport might not be for you. But without knowing who's in at quarterback, I can't responsibly take the Riders to pull a massive upset here. Based on that Bombers team that I saw yesterday, or last week rather, even if Dalton Schoen is kind of limited, because he's been a little limited in practice, still got to believe it's Bombers all day here. So let's grab the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on the road in Saskatchewan to get the win over the Riders. Now, on the line, the Riders are taking 6 points here as a home dog. And once again, if I knew who the quarterback was, and maybe if this number gets up over a touchdown, maybe you might be tempted to take the points here one way or the other. Winnipeg and take the point and lay the points. Like, with that performance that we saw from the Bombers in week 1, you take the Bombers and you lay the points until they give you a reason not to. So we're going to take the Bombers and we're going to lay the -6 on Winnipeg. Total in the game set at 47.5. That Bombers offense was clicking along, man. So I think I got to grab the over here, even though it is the biggest total of the week. Let's go over 47.5 points in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. Obviously, the Riders are going to score their points in this game as well. Let's go Bombers 30, Riders 20. I still think this is a competitive football game. Rivalry games usually are, but give me the Bombers. I'll lay the -6 and give me the over. Halfway home, and we'll take this opportunity, as we always do, to shout out our great friends and sponsors at Tease. Ladies and gentlemen, I just made my order a couple of nights ago. It is on its way to me. I can't wait. It's 5 or 6 brand new blends that I have never ever tried before, so I'm really looking forward to getting those live reactions on stuff I've never had before. You can do the same thing. You can go to nerdtease.ca. You can use my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100. And look, Tease and Coffee Bean have incredible, incredible options for you. Even if you're not a tea drinker, if you're a coffee drinker, they've got estate coffee blends now, flavored coffee blends. It's all good stuff. Just like this one, which is a wonderful black forest cake. This is what I found. It's a dessert tea. It smells delicious. It tastes delicious. That's the Tease difference right there. Nerdtease.ca, promo code BWFinest, save your 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdtease.ca. Let's cross the country to BC now, where the Lions are going to play host to the Edmonton Elks. Obviously, story of 2 different teams here coming out of week 1. We'll start with the Elks, and to the surprise of no one, Geno Lewis had the play of the week in week 1. That 102-yard touchdown reception where he goes up over the defender, I believe it was Jeremy Clark, goes up over Clark, mosses him, takes the ball right out of his hands, and he's gone down the sidelines for a score. That's Geno Lewis, baby. And that Elks fans should be obviously massively excited to have arguably the best wide receiver in the CFL on their roster. I didn't think it was the world's greatest pass from Taylor Cornelius. It was a little underthrown, but when you got Geno Lewis out there, sometimes magic happens. We know that if you watch the Montreal Alouettes over the last few seasons, and he made magic on that play. So no shock to anybody that Geno Lewis had the play of the week in week 1. Very close game for the Elks. Obviously, it came down to a somewhat miraculous 3-play goal line stand to keep them out of the end zone. Otherwise, Edmonton probably wins that game. In a game that close, the run game should have been a greater priority. We only saw 16 carries for 73 yards as a team from the Edmonton Elks. They've got Kevin Brown, who is a talented running back. He only ran the ball 11 times. Taylor Cornelius, arguably one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in the CFL, 1 carry. 1 carry for 14 yards. Makes no sense at all. Vernon Adams, who we're about to talk about, carried the ball 10 times in BC's game. That's the run volume that you need to have from Taylor Cornelius. He's too much of a weapon with his legs to only run the ball 1 time. The Elks did allow 135 yards rushing on the defensive side, which obviously you want to clean that up a little bit. But one place where their defense I thought was actually pretty impressive was in the secondary. They only allowed 179 yards passing to Trevor Harris, which is a pretty solid performance there for that secondary that has struggled. They also generated 2 interceptions. If the secondary can play 10% better than they did last year, Edmonton's going to win some football games. They lost some close games last year because the defense couldn't really stop anybody. And the run defense obviously is still looking a little dicey, but that pass defense, if they can play a little bit better, they're going to win some games. Over in BC, I shouted out the Lions as one of the two teams that actually looked like they were ready to play in week 1. And look, BC ran the Calgary Stampeders in the season opening game from wire to wire. At no point in that game was I in doubt that the BC Lions were going to win. Basically, from their first offensive possession, or first 2 possessions, I was like, okay, like, BC's here to play this year. They're not messing around. Vernon Adams with an excellent performance, just an excellent performance across the board. Offensively, defensively, the Lions were on point. Again, VA wasn't perfect, but the numbers look pretty darn good behind really, really solid play from the offensive line. They did not allow Vernon Adams to get sacked. 288 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick because VA is still a little wild and crazy with the football sometimes. And again, 10 carries for 35 yards and a rush touchdown. So Vernon Adams accounting for 3 touchdowns in the season opener here. This Lions offense looks really good. And I'm going to take the time to shout out another CFL rookie, running back Taquan Mizell for the BC Lions. 15 touches, 93 all-purpose yards in his CFL debut. That's a job well done. Looks like he's got the inside track to being the starting running back here in BC. He put up a pretty good performance in week 1. Let's see what he's got in store for an encore. As I just mentioned, the Elks did some good things in week 1, especially in the secondary. They just couldn't seal the deal. I don't expect them to have the same opportunities in this game against BC that they had in week 1. They're playing a much better football team top to bottom, as far as I'm concerned. They're playing a better roster, a team that had less turnover in the offseason, so a team that's more cohesive, has more chemistry. I just don't expect the Elks are going to have the same opportunities in this game. Let's grab the BC Lions here, especially where they're at home. Let's grab BC to beat Hamilton. Now on the line, the Lions are laying just under a touchdown at -6.5. I'm okay laying those points. BC is head and shoulders the more talented football team, even though, look, the game is not in Edmonton, so the Elks have a fighting chance here. But BC is the more talented football team. So we're going to go ahead and lay the -6.5, take the Lions to win by at least a touchdown. Total in the game set at 45.5 points, and I think based on Vernon Adams' performance in week 1 and what I know this Lions offense is capable of, even though Lucky Whitehead, I think, is either limited or didn't participate in practice, that would take a weapon out of the receiving core, but they've got receivers. They've got receivers up and down, and good chance Whitehead probably does play in this game, as is later in the weekend. I'm going to go ahead and take the over here. I understand the league was 3-1 to the under in week 1, but the number's 45.5 is a really beatable number, and I think they get there. So give me the over on the 45.5 points. Lions straight up. Let's lay the -6.5 with BC. Over 45.5 points. Let's go Lions 30, Elks 18. Competitive football game, fun football game, but give me those on the Lions. And the 4th and final game of the week, once again, the battle of the QEW with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in Toronto to take on the Argos. Argos making their season debut. Hamilton still only playing half of football games. At the very least, this time they played the second half instead of the first, and I mean, had a fighting chance. They played very well. They outscored the best team in this league by 14 points in the second half. Now, they were in a 25-point hole, so it didn't really account for all that much. But the ability to outplay an elite opponent does kind of give them a feather in the cap. And it does, or should anyway, give them a little bit of confidence moving forward. Now, if they could just figure out how to play full football games. I said it last year, I'm gonna say it again, this is a coaching thing. Both sides of the ball let Hamilton down in that game in week 1, but offensively, this team just did not look like it was ready to play. Only 13 offensive first downs for the Hamilton Ticats in week 1. No commitment to the run game whatsoever. I think James Butler had like 5 or 6 yards a carry. 6 yards a carry, I think. It was 11 for 66 and a touchdown. And I understand that it's difficult to establish a run game when you're losing by 4 possessions. I understand that, but you got to have some commitment to it. Like, you got to still put your team in a position where maybe the other team can't guess what you're about to do. No matter what the score is in the games, you still have to be somewhat committed to the run game. And Bo Levi Mitchell, I thought, was tepid in his first game. 50% on his passes. I think he was 17 for 33, 200 yards. He threw a touchdown, but also threw up 2 interceptions. And here's one thing I wanted to point out about Bo. Somebody made a point that Bo Levi Mitchell had the highest average air yards. This is an advanced stat. Highest average air yards per pass attempt in week 1. So they were like, yes, Bo Levi Mitchell's throwing the deep ball. And I'm sitting here like, Brandon Banks isn't on this roster anymore. No disrespect to Tim White, but you have one of the best pass-catching running backs in the league in James Butler. It's a big part of why he's such a weapon. But if you're not going to use that, any other running back you could pay for 11 carries and 66 yards. If you're not going to use James Butler like James Butler, why do you have James Butler? Now, obviously, the Argos didn't play last week, so I'm going to give them the kind of one big question treatment that I gave the 4 games in week 1. My big question here, obviously, it's going to be under center. So Chad Kelly, the Argos are Chad Kelly's team now. Chad Kelly has also only taken 45 career pass attempts since college. He's now 29 years old. He does not have a professional pass attempt outside of the CFL. All 45 of them did happen last season. So he got some, and everyone's very enamored by what he did coming in the Grey Cup. And I understand. I totally get that. But it's one thing to ride your adrenaline in a championship game and have a championship performance. It's quite another thing once you get to the dog days of week 9, 10, 11, 12. You still got weeks to go. You're the guy, everybody's looking at you, and that's a completely different kind of pressure. So, look, what is a realistic expectation for Chad Kelly this year? And as Chad Kelly goes, so go the Argos. So what is a realistic expectation for the Argos as a whole coming into this season? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about the Argos this year? So we saw rust play a huge factor in week 1 across the board. Like I said, 2 teams, maybe 2.5, maybe only 1.5, depending on how you want to look at it, looking like they were actually ready to play in their week 1 game. Now, yes, the Argos did get that extra week. They got that bye week. They got another week of preparation. They should come into this game very well prepared. But you would also think that coming out of training camp and the preseason, teams would have been very well prepared. We saw a lot of teams that clearly were not. So rust is playing a factor here across the league in their first games. After losing key pieces on the offensive side and on the defensive side, we can't forget Jared Davis, not there anymore. After losing those key pieces on both sides of the ball, who are these Toronto Argos? We're going to find that out at the end of this week, but I'm going to take the Hamilton Ticats to win this game. I genuinely still believe the Hamilton Ticats are one of the best rosters in the CFL. I'm going to take the Ticats to pull a very, very minor upset here as the Argos are slightly favored at home. Let's take the Argos. Let's take the Ticats on the road to beat the Argos, and by virtue of that, I'm going to take the Ticats plus 1.5 against the spread. Toronto comes into this game laying the minus 1.5 as a slight home favorite. I'm going to take the Ticats to win, so give me the plus 1.5. Total in the game set at 46.5 points. This is a very good number. I think this is right around where this actually lands. So I'm going to have to... Let's stay with the league trend. Let's stay under on this number, but just barely. I'm going to go Hamilton 23, Toronto 21. Maybe Hamilton wins this thing on a last-second field goal. I'm going to stay under on it, but again, very, very good number. I think it's very close. Give me the Ticats in the upset. Give me the plus 1.5, and give me under 46.5 points. There you go, folks. Those are the picks for week 2 in the CFL in 2023. Let's go over them here with you one more time. I got the Calgary Stampeders defeating the Ottawa REDBLACKS in Ottawa 24-14. Stampeders straight up. I'll lay the -5 on Calgary. Game stays under 43.5 points. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in Mosaic Stadium in Saskatchewan. I keep wanting to say San Francisco. In Saskatchewan to beat the Riders. Let's lay the -6 points on Winnipeg and go over 47.5 points total. 30-20 final in that one. I got the BC Lions at home beating the Edmonton Elks by a score of 30-18. So we're going to take the Lions straight up. We're going to lay the -6.5 on BC and have the game go over 45.5 points. And in Toronto, I like the Hamilton Tiger Cats with a minor upset to beat the Toronto Argos 23-21. Some last second heroics. Hamilton wins. Give me the +1.5 on the Ticats, and let's go under 46.5 points. Now's the time you've been waiting for, CFL fantasy fans. Here is my CFL fantasy roster in week 2 coming at you right now, and you're going to see that I grabbed the BC Lions defensively. Again, I think they have a very favorable defensive matchup. Saved myself a little bit of money there because I knew I was going to have to spend up at quarterback. It was only going to be 2 options at quarterback for me this week. It was either going to be Zach Collaros or it was going to be Vernon Adams. They're both $15,000. I'm going to take Collaros with a higher projected. Now you're going to see, based on that, I had to save some money. And I'm saving money at the running back position. We're grabbing those 2 spot starters. We're grabbing Peyton Logan and we're grabbing Jackson Bennett. We're going to go down to the flex position there. AJ Ouellette. AJ Ouellette is my guy, man. AJ Ouellette just did a run-in on an independent professional wrestling show in Toronto where he got in the ring wearing an Argos helmet, speared a guy. AJ Ouellette's a guy, man. I love this dude. I love this guy. He's great. So AJ Ouellette is going to be in my roster for much of this season. I'm just going to give you a little spoiler alert right now. We're going to grab him. I'm going to go with Trey Odoms-Dukes. Again, look, he had a pretty darn good performance there in week 1. I want to see what his follow-up is to that. So we're going to save a bunch of money there at the wide receiver position. And saving all that money on Trey Odoms-Dukes is going to allow us to grab our boy Nick Dembski. So obviously great performance in week 1, stacks with my starting quarterback, and if Dalton Schoen doesn't play, Nick Dembski is far and away the number 1 wide receiver for the Blue Bombers. So we're going to go ahead and spend the money and grab Nick Dembski. You'll notice, or you might not notice actually on the graphic, I can't remember now, but I am taking Zach Collaros as my captain. There you go, folks. The show is in. The picks are in. That's my week 2 show in the CFL in 2023. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Tease. I'm going to finish this delicious cup, get to editing this bad boy, get this up ASAP. Enjoy the games in week 2. I hope you also enjoyed the beginning of the 2023 Justin and Tyler Mid-Year Movie Awards. So check out part 1 if you haven't already. Part 2 and a special bonus part 3 are coming in the coming days. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for enjoying the CFL, supporting my channel, supporting this great Canadian game, and we'll see you in week 3.